we were going to talk tonight about David Seymour wanting Labour to be banished and Luxon on the polls. In a lovely way, we get to talk about a third story, which is thanks anti-vaxxers, measles are on the back, coming on their way back, which we'll do after this, because this little story actually covers off all of those stories that we're going to figure in one little story. Thank you, Simon Dallow. So let's have a look at the next part. This also talks about the polls again.
There's defiance and denial from the government after our latest One News variant poll.
From DePol. Sorry.
Revealed it currently doesn't have enough support to be in power if an election was held. While the results being dismissed by the coalition, critics say the poll shows a lack of empathy and vision from its leaders. And
how spot on is that? Lack of empathy and vision. Like I know you're reading an auto cue there, Simon, but let's just stop the bullshit about they wouldn't be in Parliament, because that's a parallel universe. But what it does suggest about empathy and vision, I'm with you, my silver fox brother.
And tonight we can reveal who Kiwis think is really pulling the strings around the cabinet table. Here's political editor Mikey Sherman.
Politicians rolling up to Parliament.
Just forgive me while I take my balaclava off so you don't mistake me for a bank robber.
Taking in the news of a grim poll result for the government.
Did you see the poll, One News poll last night?
I haven't seen a lot recently, very well.
Fair enough.
That is a golden line.
Absolute
Sir,
champion.
That is going, if we still had Eating Media Lunch, that would be the lead on Eating Media Lunch this week. Well played, sir. Well played. You get a pass. You can walk on.
I mean, it looks like it was straight from the honeymoon into the divorce period. I don't know.
People are really frustrated.
I think that's an up and down of polls.
We've got to get our country back on track. I think the new government's had a shambolic start.
The ACT Party, wasting no time, issued a newsletter last night to supporters saying what's become clear today is that Labour, who should be banished, could be back.
Now, can we just say, now, I don't think ironically, they're probably not as sophisticated as the Trump sort of ecosystem, but how Trumpian does that sound?
It struck me as the Trump turn of phrase.
Yeah. It's like they should be banished.
That he has to how he says his thing, it's the first thing I thought when I read that.
Because what a ridiculous thing to say. What it is that Trump version of speaking to low IQ voters, the undereducated that Trump actively speaks about loving, like the people who are non-educated voters, because they are the ones who are going to be thinking, yeah, let's get rid of them. Like, you can do that. They should be banished. What are you talking about? It's utterly ridiculous. And maybe on some level a bit dangerous as well.
Be back.
Look, we said that actually it's important you recognise that if people want the kind of policies that ACT's putting forward, then you have to support us.
Winston Peters claims his support is solid.
Why don't you turn up at my meetings? They're wall to wall.
Because no one in the press gallery is old enough to turn up to your meetings, Winston. There's a minimum entry age of 82. You wouldn't let them in. You turn them away for being too young.
Packed out. Be a good experience for you.
Rubbishing the poll results.
Your polls are not worth the air or the words that they're
air.
Christopher
Did you get that? Who's losing his marbles? Your polls aren't worth the air they're written. Spoken to. My diaper.
Says he didn't tune in for the numbers.
I get in my news feed in lots
Didn't
of different
tune in.
ways. I just hadn't actually seen your report last night.
One former minister suggested that's a mistake.
Well, this is one poll, and one poll doesn't make an election outcome. On the other hand, they'd be foolish to ignore some of the warning signs in here about the loss of support and some of the anxiety that's coming through from the public.
In our latest One News variant poll, we also asked which of the parties...
Well, he's got a perspective, I guess, on being in coalition, and also, he's the worm, isn't he? They think he knows about populist kind of politics, Mr. Middleman. But what he says is right there, because he did basically say the result doesn't matter when it comes to the House, but they shouldn't ignore what it indicates, what the poll indicates, as opposed to what the actual numbers are. I think that's what we've been saying. Maybe he's been watching our show. Hi, Peter, if you're watching.
He's not wrong with what he said, but I can't take him seriously ever since those Facebook chain letters.
Yeah.
There were people you had to post on your thing that you revoked rights for Facebook to use your personal information. Rowdy. Do you remember when they were real popular?
Yeah.
I remember him sharing that on his MP page.
Oh, right.
And I made a comment of like, this is legally nonsense. This is literally just a chain letter. And his reaction was to ban me from his Facebook page. So, like, the man's a lawyer. You should know that. Or a lawmaker, I should say.
You get banned and blocked quite a lot. You must be a bad boy.
I am the worst person.
Let's have a look at this question now. Which of the party leaders do you think has the most influence on government decisions?
Leaders do you think has the most influence on government decisions? Half of respondents said the Prime Minister, but around a quarter thought Winston Peters, and 10% said David Seymour.
I mean, we've got to be fair. Winston has the biggest slice of the pie, and he is more than 50%. But for the Prime Minister not to be in the 80s or 90s, so that means 1 in 4 people think that Winston Peters has the most influence. 1 in 10 think that David Seymour has the most influence. And I guess that's almost 1 in 5 don't know. You wouldn't trust to sit the right way on a toilet seat.
Rest didn't know or wouldn't say.
Of course, the Prime Minister is in charge. Depends which day of the week, and it depends on which issue.
The Prime Minister is always in charge.
You don't know who's in charge because Winston says whatever he likes, Seymour says whatever he likes.
And while completely coincidental, former National Prime Minister Sir John Key was at Parliament offering moral support.
You know, like when you've got the favourite teacher at school who's left and the new teacher comes in, everyone hates the new teacher, and then the favourite teacher comes back for a morning tea the following, and just the kids gravitate to the favourite teacher in front of the eyes of the teacher they all hate now. I'm just like, if I was Luxon, you'd be like, hey JK, how about we just have a coffee out the back? You don't really need to parade yourself in your popularity polls in front of us today, do you? Please, maybe just not today, Sir John, please.
Look, I don't think there's any need for concern. I think they're working actually extremely well as a unified group as I thought they would.
A poll that's got everyone talking.
All right, Mikey,
There you go. Everyone's talking, Chewy. Everyone's talking about the poll, which I guess is fair enough because they are. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, everybody's talking about the poll. Everybody's.
I mean, we're not
talking.
Well,
same.
We wouldn't cover it for 2 nights in a row.
No,
we wouldn't do that.
Not even now.
No.
Every political commentator has commented on it with the same sort of obnoxious hyperbole that we were talking about from Mikey's coverage. Yes, it's just so overblown. It means fuck all. The trend matters. But these individual polls, and as soon as you translate it to seats in the House, get fucked. It makes no difference. Everybody, like, the reaction that's worthy of note is how the actual players are spinning it. As I said, Luxon saying that he didn't know is bullshit and should be acknowledged as such.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think he was kind of saying, I didn't watch the news last night, which doesn't mean he doesn't know exactly what the results were. But it's kind of stupid to play that game, especially after he was on the same station 12 hours earlier talking about the polls.
And then look, it just gave Winston another opportunity to take a swing at the media. So, that's the sort of thing. It's like the only time that Winston should be covered is when he's overseas and actually appears to be a functioning statesman, rather than when he's at home being a domestic fuckwit.
Yeah. Yep. Let me show you.
Some people in the chat have been busy while we've been talking about this, by the way.
Oh, okay. But that's Purple Grimace. I need a cartoonist to make it properly. It's still pretty good though. Do you want to see the letter, the email that Seymour was quoted in? I'll show you the email.
Oh, yeah.
This is the email that went out today. Some governments get a honeymoon from the media. Others get an inflation hangover. Tonight's one variant poll showed the details, yada, yada, yada. People are understandably upset about the cost of living, interest rates, and a soft economy. We don't just see that, we feel it. Here's the risk. If enough voters punish this government, desperate do you sound, punish this government, oh, I can make it bigger. Punish this government for the inflation and the debt of the last one. Well, hang on. You're punishing the last government from the debt of the previous national government, which put on twice as much as the previous national government put on 50 billion. The last government put on 25. So aren't you? Sorry, I won't try and convince people of like the facts. Debt of the last one. New Zealand will get the bad medicine back, whatever that means. By the time people finally realize it doesn't work, it will be too late. It's interesting that, again, they're all saying these polls don't matter because it's 2.5 years away to the next election. Yet ACT is saying these polls really matter and it's only 2.5 years away to the next election. So that this letter is actually identifying they could get back in. That implies we have to listen to this poll because there is another election on the way, whilst they're all saying in front of the camera, well, it doesn't really matter because there's not another election for 2.5 years. They say what becomes clear today is that Labour, who should be banished, could be back, and back with two very bad sidekicks. You mean like National? Every day in government, ACT is taking the necessary steps to clean up Labour's mess. And our team is working towards 2026 to make sure your voice and values are represented, but we can't do it without you. Cha-ching, money sound, please. We'll be coming after that because you can't do it without you and your wallets. I guess that makes sense. We'll do some fundraising off it, but that was the actual email that went out that someone sent me today. Kia ora again, whānau. The clip you've just watched is brought to you today by our patrons. If you want to be a part of what we do, if you want to get behind what we're doing, if you're enjoying our content and wanting to share our content, then maybe you would consider being a patron to Big Hairy News. Head to www.patreon.com/Big Hairy News to sign up to one of our levels and be a patron. At this point, we are only a listener and viewer supported show. It all comes down to you guys. If you feel like jumping on board to help, then head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Hooroo!